have you ever heard of frontal lobe syndrome? Pretty much I had it as a teenager and in my early 20s. And I did crazy stuff. I was always getting in trouble for sneaking out and doing some, crazy stuff. Well, much to my father's chagrin, I started dating this guy from QVC. And he was a bit of a rebel, and he gave me a run for my money. And he drove a motorcycle, and, we did crazy stuff like mountain bike in Valley Forge Park, down Mount Batty. Have you ever heard of that? Late at night, in the dark, without headlights. And there were impalements and scratches and blood. And now, I've had 4 concussions and a seizure, so I did wear a helmet. I was smart enough to do that. But one time we went to Maine and we were camping, and he was from Maine, and he took me to this, we went hiking along the ocean, and it was on a cliff, and it was like 20 feet up, and we climbed down, and he was telling me this story. There was a cave, and the ocean was right there, and he was telling me the story, and I was half listening about how stupid tourists would come and be washed away because they didn't understand the tides of Maine and how quickly they come in. And I was, he was a writer, and he intended to embellish stories, so I was half listening and not really listening. And I was more mesmerized by these rocks, and it was like Murano glass. It was beautiful, like years of the ocean coming through this cave and washing these rocks. I was stuffing my pockets with them, and we were there for a little while, and then he's like Superman. He runs up the cliff, and he's at the top, and he goes, "We need to leave now." I'm like, okay, and I'm just like, oh, these rocks are beautiful, and he goes, "Now!" And I'm like, okay, I'm coming. And so the tide's coming in, and it's about to here, and I'm like, he's screaming at me, "You need to climb up now. The tide's coming in. You don't understand." So I'm like, oh, okay, I might need to worry about this. So I started to climb up the cliff, and my upper arm strength has never been very good. I didn't do well with the rope climbs in high school and the flex arm hang. So I'm climbing up, and the ocean's really starting to come in pretty quickly. And I'm like, oh crap. So I'm like halfway up, and I'm slipping, and I'm falling, and my feet are wet, and he's like, "Throw the shoes up." I'm like, oh, okay. So I throw the shoes up, and I'm halfway up, and I'm frozen with fear, because at this point, the synapses are starting to relinquish the story, that he was telling me. These stupid tourists get washed out at sea, and I'm like a really good swimmer, and I'm like, there's no hope for me. And I'm watching the water, and I'm like, crap. So I'm like halfway up, and I'm like hanging there, and he comes down like Superman, and he grabs my wrist, and he pulls me up, and I'm fine. So I go, we were avid photographers, and I said, "Did you get any pictures while I'm hanging on the cliff?" He's like, "Oh yeah, of course I did." But the whole point where we're there was because it was really cool. The water comes through the cave, and it makes an old faithful spraying, and we're like, yeah, that's cool. But that's not, the craziest thing we ever did involved a freight train. Just say it, freight train. Can't be good. No. We're in Valley Forge Park, and we're hiking, and there's a freight train, and it's kind of slowly moving. You could walk along with it, and next thing I know, this crazy guy, who's a little bit crazier than I am, or used to be, I'm not like that anymore, he's like Superman. He runs up, and he's on top of this train, and I'm like, And he's running along with his camera, and he's jumping like a gazelle from car to car, and I'm like, that's really stupid. I gotta do that. So next thing you know, I'm climbing up this ladder, and I'm on top of this train, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And we got the camera, and we're taking all kinds of really cool shots. I'm hanging on the side with my face, and we're doing, motion shots. And next thing you know, it's starting to move a little bit faster, and he's like, we gotta get off. And I'm like, oh, no, this is fun. I don't want to get off. And I'm like, take some more pictures. So next thing I know, he's such a gentleman. He's off the train. No, not a gentleman. That's why I'm married to him. Thank you very much. And so I'm on top of this thing, and it's starting to move a little bit faster, and the wind's starting to pick up, and I'm teetering, and I'm like, oh. And he's screaming at me. And at this point, he's kind of running along with the train, and he's like, you gotta get off now. And I'm like, uh-oh. I'm like, how? So it's getting faster, 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 and I kind of do a drop to the floor, and I'm like in the fetal position, and he's screaming at me, you gotta get off. And I'm like, I can't. He's like, just get to the ladder. And I slide over to the ladder, and the wind is going faster and faster, and I'm like, okay. So we ease down, and I'm hanging there, and it's getting really fast because the wind's blowing, and I'm like kind of, whoa. And then I look down at the ground, and it's moving really fast, and I'm like, how am I going to get off this train? So I'm just sitting there, and he's screaming, get off now, and he's barely able to keep up with the train at this point. And I'm just like, no, I'm staying here. I'm going to break my leg. I'm just going to stay here forever. But he did say something that reached my brain, and he said, if you don't get off now, you're going to Harrisburg. I'm like, okay. So I jump down and I splat, and it's bad. Blood everywhere, face plant in the gravel, and I get up and I meander over and I said, you better have taken some damn good pictures.